Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be Zayde Story Corner. That's right, Zayde Story Corner. And again, we are back again to tell you more of the stories from the silly world of film. That's right. That's right. So, how's things been going? It's been going pretty good. So, you fell down last week. Yeah, I did fall down last week. And yeah, fortunately, I did not hurt myself. But how did you know? I saw you out the window. You saw me out the window and you didn't come out to help me? I couldn't. Well, why couldn't you? I was laughing too hard. Oh, I see. Well, it's a good thing I didn't hurt myself. Yes, it is. Yeah, you fell down hard. Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, nothing broke, nothing hurt. So got right back up and finished what I was doing, and off we go. Yeah, well, there we go. So okay, let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald. We have Kelsey Lynn. We have Veronica. And we have Reb Moshe of Safat. And he got kicked off of Facebook. Yes, he did. They actually uh, put him in Facebook jail for a few days because he posted something, posted a link to Dr. Zev Zelenko. He's a friend. Yeah, he is a friend. Dr. Zev Zelenko's website, and they obviously took offense to it, as they do with so many things today, and they suspended him. But you posted this thing. Yes, I did. I did. He sent me the screenshot, and I posted it up and let everybody know that he was being unjustly targeted by Facebook, and we did not think it was fair. So anyway, let's see who Marshall has joined us, and Marilyn Chernock has joined us. So we are got a good group. More to come. Yeah, more to come. Always more to come. And so we're going to continue reading about Helm. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we're going to continue reading about Helm. We're getting pretty close to the end of the book. You know, that's all right. We're going to need more stories. Yeah, we are. We are going to need more stories. We have run through a lot of books over the years doing this. We've done the stories of Shalom Aleichem. We've done the other Jewish folk tales. Yeah, yeah, another whole book of Jewish folk tales. The Silly World of Helm, of course, and a number of other books too. And we're kind of running out of stories. So if you have any suggestions, send them in. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So 4 books. Okay. So let's get you on your camera. And so there I am. I am good now. Okay. So now we are going to finish well, actually continue, because we aren't going to finish yet. We're going to continue the stories from the silly world of Helm, a treasury of Jewish wit and whimsy. So here we go. Now we are going to, there's a whole bunch about trains this week. But anyway, we're going to start off with one about the thief. My goodness, in Helm? Okay, so let us find out what happened with a thief in Helm. Once upon a time, in the tiny village of Helm, someone stole the Zadaka box from the town's only shul. Oh, what a terrible thing to have happen, huh? What a scandal! The townspeople were very concerned and called upon the old sage of Helm to seek his help in finding the thief. Who could have done such a terrible thing? The elders asked the old sage. The old sage asked, "Was there anybody in the building when the thief took place?" "Yes," exclaimed Muscle the tailor. "There were 3 boys in the building. But when we asked them if they took the money, each denied it. We don't want to accuse anyone falsely, so we have come to you for help." The old sage asked the elders to bring the boys to his house. When the 3 youths entered, the old sage said, "One of you is guilty, and it would be better for the thief to speak up now." But none of them uttered a word. The old sage turned to the elders and exclaimed, "I will expose the thief in a few minutes." He turned to the leader of the elders and said, "Jacob, bring me 3 pillowcases." The sage turned to the youth and said, "Now, each of you will put a pillowcase over your head so no one can see your face." The youth did as he said. Then the old sage called out, "Does everyone have a pillowcase over his head?" The 3 called out together, "Yes." The old sage asked, "And even the one who stole the money?" And the little fellow standing in front called out from under the pillowcase, "Yes." And so, from that day on in hell, whenever anything was stolen, everyone who was in the vicinity of the thief had to put a pillowcase over their heads. And for years, that is how they solved any crime in the little village of Helm. Ah, what you think about that, huh? Okay. Okay, this one is called The Town Meeting. In the wonderful world of Helm, they had a problem. Every time a town meeting was held, there was such a din from people talking, it was almost impossible to hear what was going on. One day, a delegation came to the old sage of Helm. "How can we solve the problem of people talking at our meetings?" The old sage thought for a moment, then declared, "Who are the ones talking?" "It's always those who sit in the last row of our meeting hall." It sounds like a couple of shuls that we used to be with. Yes, it does kind of sound like some of the shuls. Yeah, we've been. Yeah, it's always the back row. Yeah, it's always the back row. Yeah, always sitting there cracking in Yiddish. Yeah, okay. So anyway, so not a unique thing to Helm. Okay, is what I'm saying. Okay, so let us go on with this story. Who are the ones talking? It's always those who sit in the last row of our meeting hall. The delegation exclaimed. "Indeed," reflected the sage. "Then it is very simple. All you have to do is take out the last row of seats. Since there will be no seats, there will be no talking." "Amazing! How simple," they gasped. And so they returned to the town hall to remove the last row of seats. The following day, there was a meeting. And still there was a din of noise as the council tried to solve the problems of the day. The delegation ran to the old sage. "There is still so much noise we can hardly even hear ourselves think," they said. And where does the noise come from? The sage asked. Now, from what is now the last row of seats. So, to return to the hall and to remove what is now the last row of seats. Those who spoke in those seats will also have no seats to stay and stay away from the meeting. Now you will have silence at your meeting. The delegation returned, removed what was the last row of seats now, and conducted their meeting. But still, the din of the people talking continued. They ran back to the sage, who gave them the same advice once more. So they quickly returned again and took out what was the last row of seats, but the talking continued. So they returned and removed another row of seats, then another, and another. And finally, all the seats were removed. Since all the seats were gone, there was no place for anyone to sit. So no one came to the meetings except for the town's board of directors. And since they were the only ones in the meeting hall for their council meetings, with no one from the community to vote on their propositions, it was deemed unnecessary to hold the meetings anymore. This is how the town council of Helm solved the problem of people talking in their meetings. Well, now a couple of board meetings from shuls that could probably benefit from this advice. You think? Maybe. We may have to propose that. Okay. We shall see. Okay. Anyway, okay, so now we are on to the train stories. This one is called, as you may have guessed, The Train. The village of Helm was bordered by two other villages. In one, men raised cattle. In the other, there was a market where the cattle was sold. Every time Mendel, the cattle owner, wanted to sell a cow, he would have to walk over to the next village. The fastest way to go there was through Helm. Now, the people of Helm were happy to see Mendel bring his cows to their town. But as Mendel prospered and brought more and more cows to market, the Helmites grew annoyed. Mendel, you have lovely cows, but do they have to trample my roses? Questioned Gavalda, the miller's wife. Mendel, why don't you tell your cows to graze in someone else's front lawn? And asked Schmendrick, the mayor of Helm. The town people grew more irate. Finally, the town council was called into session. Mendel's cows are making a mess of our peaceful village by walking through it, declared one man. What can we do? Mendel felt helpless. How do you expect my cows to get to market? By railroad? Mendel questioned. You know, that's not such a bad idea, declared Schmendrick. I think we should have a railroad for his cows. That way, they won't have to walk through the town anymore. Sounds like a logical conclusion. Okay, anyway. Everyone in town thought it was a good idea, but when it came to start building, there was a problem. I can't have a railroad running in front of my store, exclaimed Hochmeyer the chicken flicker. It will scare my chickens. A railroad running through the middle of town? What will happen to our peaceful village? Complained Moshe the Chazan. The members of the council realized that the townspeople didn't want the cows and didn't want a railroad running through their town. They approached the old sage, who always had a proper answer for every big question, big or small. So they don't want a railroad through the town, mused the sage. Why not let the railroad go around the town? He exclaimed. Around the town, around the town, cheered the town council. What a brilliant sage we have! And so they began to work on the railroad. All of Helm's master craftsmen were called to help. And remember the words of our wise old sage, ordered the mayor to the workers, build the railroad around the town. So the men worked feverishly for months. Finally, the railroad was built. It went completely around the town. Of course, this did not help Mendel at all, since he still had to walk his cattle through the center of town to get to the railroad station. Best laid plans, huh? Okay. So we go on to the next story called The Train Ride. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, Mendel, the watchmaker, decided to take a trip to Minsk to purchase some supplies. This was the first time Mendel was going to ride on a train, and he was very excited. Now remember, the old sage of Helm exclaimed, you must change in Anatevka for the express direct to Minsk. What does change mean? Mendel asked, quite confused. It means that the Helmetscher local stops in Anatevka, and there you must get off and take another train that will take you to Minsk. Mendel was even more confused. Look, I'll pin a note to your jacket with instructions for the conductor. He will put you on the right train when you reach Anatevka, the sage of Helm explained. And so it was. With the note pinned to his lapel, Mendel set out on his journey. When the train reached Anatevka, the conductor looked at the note and sent Mendel to the other platform where he was to catch the train to Minsk. But Mendel did not know where to stand on the platform. And when a train arrived from the opposite direction, pulling in, he innocently got on the train and sat down. The train pulled out and chugged along, heading further away from Minsk. As Mendel sat next to another gentleman, he smiled and tried to make conversation. You two are going to Minsk? He asked. The stranger looked astonished. Going to Minsk? Are you crazy? I am coming from Minsk. Mendel smiled proudly and shook his head in amazement. Indeed, this is a wonderful world with all of the miracles of science. Here we are, two men, one going to Minsk and the other coming from Minsk. And we are both on the same train. Oy. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Here is another story about a train. This one is called The Train Station. A visitor to Helm stopped the Helmite and asked, "Excuse me, where would the train station be, please?" And the Helmite smiled and said, "Right where you are standing." The visitor thanked the Helmite and continued to wait. In a few minutes, he noticed there were no tracks in front of the building. "Excuse me," he said to the Helmite, "but there are no tracks here. How could this be the train station?" "Oh, we have no trains in Helm," the Helmite said. "No trains? Then why did you tell me to wait here?" "Because you asked me where would the train station be. When we get a train, this is where the train station would be," the Helmut answered as he walked away. He's got a point. Yes, he does. Yes. May not be a good point, but he has a point. Okay. Here we go. Another train story. This one is called The Train Schedule. In the tiny village of Helm, they finally got a little railroad that ran just by the outskirts of town. So, whenever a train passed through, everyone in the village gathered by the station just to watch the train and marvel at the powerful engine. So when the village of Helm actually became a stop on the line to discharge and pick up passengers, the little community felt they had now gained recognition. The train stopped in Helm just once a week. This was because there were very few people in Helm who traveled. After all, where could they go? It was a big event when Shepsil the butcher decided to take a trip to Minsk just to see the sights. Shepsil packed his bags, said goodbye to his wife and children, and prepared to leave for a week's stay in the big city. On the day he was supposed to leave, however, he returned home from the train station in tears. "What happened?" his wife asked. "What happened?" he sobbed. "Nothing happened," he moaned. "I missed the train." "You missed the train?" his wife gasped. "That's correct," Shepsel cried once more, sitting on the floor and crying. "I don't understand," begged his wife. "You went to the station on time and yet you missed the train? How did that happen?" "On the way to the train station, I looked at my watch and it said I had plenty of time before the train was to arrive. So I stopped off to say goodbye to my old friend Yankel. So we sat and we talked and we had a little wine. And then I started for the station," he explained. "No? So you still had plenty of time, didn't you?" his wife asked. Of course I had plenty of time, he sobbed once more, shaking back and forth in great anguish. So I decided to pick a few flowers in the field to give to the conductor on the train so he will give me a good seat. So then what happened? Asked his wife. So what happened? Nothing, he sobbed. When I got to the station, I saw the train had already pulled out. By how much did you miss the train? His wife asked. By how much? He repeated. By less than a minute. His wife smiled. Oh, that's not too bad. By the way you were carrying on, I thought you missed it by at least an hour. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. Okay. So here we go. Okay. So, you comfortable now? Yes, I'm comfortable now. Thank you. Okay. Can we go on? Yes, we can go on. Okay, so this story is called The Traveler. Itzhak was one of the senior citizens who lived in the small village of Helm. A hard-working soul indeed, but a simple man. One day, he was notified that his uncle had passed away and had left him a great fortune. All of the villagers in Helm came to his house to offer their condolences and simultaneously congratulations on his newfound inheritance. What will you do with your newfound fortune? The old sage of Helm questioned. First, I will give the greater portion of my heritage to charity, he began. Then, since I have always wanted to travel, maybe I will travel. You see, I was born in Helm and have lived all my years in our wonderful village. Before I breathe my last, I would like to see what the outside world looks like. But, alas, since I have never met anyone who has traveled, I do not know how to travel. Ah, it is simple, said the old sage of Helm. I too have never traveled, but I have heard that it is simple. All you have to do is hitch up your horse to your wagon and drive it to our train station. You are supposed to get out of the wagon, go into the station waiting room, and wait until a train comes. That is all there is to it. Then, after the train leaves, and it is a good idea to travel no more than 2 hours, you take a horse and wagon and tour the community. That is how I was told people actually travel. Yitzhak thanked the old sage and began packing for his trip. The following morning, he did just what the old sage had said. He took his horse out of the barn, hitched it to his wagon, and drove the wagon to the station. He went into the station waiting room and waited for a train. He waited the 2 hours he had been told to wait, and sure enough, a train chugged into the station. It stopped for a few minutes to take on water, then pulled out. But old Yitzhak remained in the waiting room. And why not? No one told him he was supposed to get on the train. After the train had left, he stood up, stretched his arms, and thought, "My, this traveling is delightful. I am not even one bit tired." As he walked out of the waiting room, he saw his horse and wagon just where he had left them. "Look at that! Just like the old sage said, there is a horse and wagon at the station." So he got into the wagon and began to drive off. After a short distance, he thought, "My, how much this horse looks like mine. Even this wagon resembles my own with rust in the very same spots." After a short distance, he was in front of his own farmhouse. "This is amazing. First, a horse and wagon that resembles my own, and now this farmhouse, it looks exactly like my own back in the village of Helm." As he continued down the winding road of Helm, he commented, "My, how much this world reminds me of Helm. There are even holes in the road in the very same places." As he rode into the village square, he exclaimed in delight, "This is unbelievable! This village square is almost identical to the one we have in Helm." Now, since it was lunchtime, all the villagers were having their afternoon meal, and so the streets were empty. He thought to himself once more, "It is really an amazing world. I cannot believe how much the outside world looks exactly like the village of Helm. I must return quickly as possible to tell everyone how much the world away from Helm looks like Helm. For, after all, if it looks the same but has no people, why should anyone even bother to travel there?" After touring what he thought was the outside world, he decided to return to the station and go back to Helm to tell everyone how much the outside world actually looked like the village of Helm. Arriving at the station, he sat for another 2 hours. Then another train passed through, coming from the opposite direction. A short time later, he stood up and stretched once more. "Ah, this traveling is delightful, but it is good to be back in Helm." He got into his wagon and rode to the village square, where he was greeted by the villagers who, by now, had finished their lunch and were milling around the town. "You would not believe it," he began. "The entire world is exactly like our world of Helm." "You mean it?" questioned the old sage of Helm. "You know, I have never traveled, but I too have heard such things." "It is true. Even the farmers plant the very same crops we do. Indeed, the outside world is exactly like Helm." "And how about the people?" they all asked in awe. "You would not believe it, but there are no people in the outside world. I did not see one. Therefore, we must assume all the people in the world live in Helm." "An amazing deduction," shouted the old sage of Helm. Such wisdom must not go unrewarded. So, you shall become the mayor of Helm, because you are the most traveled man in our village, and indeed understand the way of the world outside our village. Ay. Okay, I think it's time to take a break. We take a break and we come back and we finish and find out a little more about travel in the world of Helm. Okay, so everybody stay tuned. We be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And as promised, we are back. Okay. So, what did we learn from this story? That the whole world is just like hell. And I tell you, from what has been going on in the world today, I have to agree. Okay. So, let us get back to our stories. Okay. This one is called The Trip to Minsk. So much going on in Minsk, huh? Okay. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, the old sage decided to take a trip to the big city of Minsk. He saddled his horse and began the long, dusty trip to the far off city. When he arrived in Minsk, he led the horse down the street as he looked for a shul. Finally, he found the place. Finding no hitching post near the shul, he waited patiently. In a few minutes, a very well-dressed man came out of the shul. As he started to walk down the street, the old sage called out, "Excuse me, but could you do me a very big favor?" You have to turn the page. I know I have to turn the page. The man stopped and walked toward the old sage. "What can I do for you, my friend?" the man questioned. "You can please hold my horse while I go inside to visit with an old friend. I shall not be very long," he exclaimed. The man scowled indignantly. "How dare you? Do you know who I am? How dare you ask me to mind your horse?" The old man smiled sheepishly and said, "I'm sorry. Let me introduce myself. I am the old sage of Helm. And who are you, sir?" The man continued scowling and replied, "Why, do you realize I am the president of the largest bank in Minsk? Hundreds of thousands of kopecks pass through my hands every day. People come from all over and come to me for loans. You ask me to hold your horse? Do you realize what you are doing?" The old sage, with a twinkle in his eye, smiled warmly and replied, "Listen, my friend. So you are the manager of the bank and make loans to hundreds of people. But I am willing to trust you with my horse. So what do you care?" And so, from that day on, the old sage returned from his trip to Minsk any time when anyone went to another community. They would always seek out the local banker to hold his horse, because the old sage had said, "You are permitted to trust a banker to hold your horse." I'm not sure I would trust the banker to hold my horse. I tell you what, I'm not so sure. Yeah, things were different back in those days. Maybe not so different. Okay, this story is called The Zadaka Box. Again with the Zadaka Box. Okay, let's hope nobody steals it this time. Okay, so the people of Helm were very charitable. Every day when they arrived at the shul, they would place a few corns in the tzedakah box. When there were souls in need, they always knew they could come to the shul and take what they needed from the box. But one day a catastrophe occurred. Oh no! Someone broke into the shul during the night and stole the contents of the charity box. And so, the next day, there was an urgent meeting of the village elders to decide what to do. We must get a new Zadaka box and put a strong lock on it, one person suggested. In this way, we can ensure that no one will be able to steal money from the box. But, asked another, what if a poor person needs money and is too embarrassed to ask us for the key? Then we would have defeated our very purpose, that of keeping dignity among our own. It was agreed among them that a lock would not be a wise idea. Let us go to the sage of Helm and ask him what to do, suggested another. And so they went to the home of the sage, the wisest man in all of Helm, and told him their problem. The sage stroked his beard thoughtfully, then smiled warmly. It is simple, he answered. The problem is that you want the Zadaka box to be secure and readily available to the poor. You should tie the Zadaka box to a rope that will hang from the ceiling. It will be many feet off the ground, so no thief will be able to take the money from it. How brilliant! What genius! They all shouted. Then one of the elders asked, but, dear sage, how would the poor be able to reach the box when they need it? Ah, smiled the sage, this is simple too. After you tie the Zadaka box to the ceiling, you will put a tall ladder just beneath the box, so the poor will be able to reach the box in their time of need. Oh, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? I guess. Yeah, well, I guess so. Okay. Okay. Okay, this one is very interesting. Okay. This one, we are no longer on the train. Okay. This one is called The Verdict. Okay. Maybe a Perry Mason, huh? Or maybe one of those, the rabbi did this on Monday and the rabbi did that on Tuesday and whatever. They're good books. Yes, they are. They actually are very good books. Maybe we read those. Well, maybe. Maybe. We'll have to see. Okay, so anyway, once upon a time, in the village of Helm, Yitzhak the cobbler had an argument with one of his customers. One word led to another, and in a few minutes the poor customer was knocked unconscious. Yitzhak was immediately arrested, and a trial was held. The jurors heard the evidence against Yitzhak and found him guilty. The judge bowed his head and said, Yitzhak, you have committed a terrible sin. You have injured one of our most respected citizens. Therefore, I am going to sentence you to sit in prison for 10 years. Yitzhak bowed his head sadly. Then his attorney Mendel stood up. Your Honor, he said, you have sentenced Yitzhak, our cobbler, to 10 years in prison. Do you realize he is the only cobbler in hell? If he goes to prison for 10 years, there will be no cobbler in our village. Who will repair our shoes? Our children and our wives will have to go barefoot. A hush fell over the courtroom as each Helmite looked at each other, shaking their head in realization of what had just taken place. The great sage of Helm, who was the judge, nodded in agreement, and indeed it would be a tragedy for the little village. He then turned to the defense attorney and said, Mendel, you are right. Your client is the only cobbler in our village. And if we sentence him to jail for 10 years, indeed, no one will have shoes to wear. Mendel's defense attorney nodded in agreement. Do you have any suggestions? Asked the old sage. Mendel thought for a moment and said, Of course I do, good sage. You see, we have 2 roofers in our village, and we actually need only one. Why not let one of the roofers sit in jail so our cobbler can continue making and repairing shoes for our village? A cheer went up from the crowd as the old sage smiled his approval. Then so be it. The cobbler will return to his shop, and since we have 2 roofers, we will start a trial tomorrow to see which one sits in jail for Yitzhak's crime. The following day, both roofers were brought into court. Since both pleaded innocent because they had nothing to do with the incident, both were found not guilty. And that is how justice was handed down in the little village of Kelm. Ah, my goodness. Do we have time for one more? I think we have time for one more. Okay, we do one more tonight. Okay. This one is called the final one for tonight. No cliffhangers, Donald. Just so you know, no cliffhangers. Okay. This one is called The Video Machine. The little village of Helm had a reputation as a village of fools. It wasn't that the people of Helm were stupid, heaven forbid. It was just that they had a sort of maladjusted impression of life. No? So, when a stranger from Pinsk happened to pass through the village of Helm with a catalog displaying all kinds of new technology, it created quite a stir. Within its pages were the latest inventions of the outside world. The stranger passed the catalog to a person who discussed it with another, and it was decided that it should be shown to Motel, the Bar Mitzvah boy. One day, the elders of Helm explained to the youth, you will go out into the world, and it has been decided that you should know about the new marvels. Muzzle took the catalog home and read every page, maybe 100 times. He scanned every picture to absorb everything his eyes beheld. In the catalog was a story of a new invention called a video machine. Muzzle studied the picture and reread the story 100 times as well. The following day, he rushed to the house of the old sage of Helm. "O sage," he began, "you are the wisest man in Helm. You know everything. There is even a legend that tells how, at the age of 20, you sold your encyclopedia because you know everything. In this catalog, I read about this new invention called a video machine. It says it is a device that sends a picture through the air to a screen a person will have in their home. And the picture with the sound. Turned that page too quick, didn't you? Yeah, I think just a little too quick. I'm sorry. Come to practice next time. Okay, no problem. Okay, and the picture with sound will be produced as if that person was sitting in the very same room with you. It's magical, the youth exclaimed excitedly. The old sage listened intently to the youth's enthusiasm. "My son," he declared, "that is not magic, it is science." The youth looked at the pictures once more, then asked, "I understand many things, but this is beyond me. I don't understand how it works without wires." The old sage, with a twinkle in his eyes, sighed, "Mortal, my son, let me ask you, if you read it worked with wires, would you understand then?" We'll just leave it there. Okay. So this is where we are going to stop for tonight. We will continue with the rest of the book, which is not that very many. We only have about 30 pages or so. Anyway, so when we return next week, we will continue on to learn about what is going on in the world of Helm. So I hope you will all come back next week. Don't forget, Wednesday night is the Torah study in depth with Rabbi A. And Friday night at 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service. And Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shachrit and Musaf. So I hope you will be there. And don't forget to come next week and we will learn more about Helm. Until then, we shall say, Laila Tov.